Hi, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I can see we've already got our regular Hawaiian on the stream here, Donny Girl. So a warm welcome to you. And thanks everyone for being with me this evening because we've got a very special guest we're going to bring on in a second. First of all, before we do that, let me just jump across onto the Getter stream so I can see, hopefully, what's happening there with your comments and so on and so forth. So let me see where this might be. This is always a scary bit, where I have to press buttons and stuff. But strange, I can't actually see the stream. So don't know what's going on there. Oh well, hang on. I can. It's okay. I thought it was. I thought it was the Russians. They'd probably impacted on the stream, or maybe climate change. All these things we have to worry about. But we don't have to worry about any such thing, of course. So a warm welcome to everybody on Rumble, Getter, on Twitter, on and everywhere. Anyway, you're all very welcome. Thanks for joining here. And well, as I said, this is a real treat this evening. This is a pleasure. I can absolutely assure you, because I can't think of anyone I'd rather spend an hour chatting to than our guest for this evening, and that, of course, is Gemma O'Doherty. Let's bring Gemma onto the screen. Hello, Gemma.
Good evening, David. How are you? Thank you very much. I know you have your tongue firmly in your cheek
No,
there.
no, 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 far from it. In fact, actually, I'll tell you what I wanted to do, Gemma, to start things off. I got an email from one of my followers who I think also follows you as well. And I've got in front of me, I'll sort of paraphrase slightly. But anyway, they were saying they're looking forward to us chatting tonight, saying I've followed her, being you, for many a year now, back when you were doing the investigations into the HPV jab, Mary Boyle, Niall Malloy, Sophie Toscan de Plantier. I'm not sure that one. Followed her during her political career as well. After listening to Gemma and John Waters for many months, I have reconnected with my faith, a much needed sustenance over these last few years. Gemma, in my opinion, is a modern day Joan of Arc. There you
Oh,
go. There you go. Just got that. I got that email very, very just not for long
that
before
is
coming in there. So there you go, Gemma.
well, thank you. I'm sure you'll get 100 horrible ones, but thank you so much to whoever wrote that, and I appreciate it so much. And thanks, David, for reading it out. I wish I was, but
Well,
um,
given the state of the world in general, and I suppose Ireland in particular, Gemma, I mean, the Joan of Arc analogy isn't maybe that far stretched because, as you point out on your own streams, and by the way, everyone, just to kick off with, do make sure you're following Gemma wherever you're watching this. So if you're on Twitter, make sure you follow Gemma on Getter. Here we go. Here is her Twitter.
I'm
Um,
still banned, though. I'm not really supposed to be there. I'm not
yeah,
like
yeah.
you.
You see, the thing about Twitter is, whilst it's very appreciative, I'm very appreciative of the position I've got back on it. It's not working properly yet. It's really not, Jam. You're dead right. There's loads of people, but we've chatted about some of them, not least yourself, who should have their proper account back. And the fact that's not happened is disturbing because enough time's gone by. But one of the things actually is, Gemma, that I've talked about. We'll talk about Twitter for a second. We're not going to obsess about Twitter, but just FYI, a lot of these big tech companies, Gemma, and this is something maybe not everyone understands, are based, located in Dublin, in Ireland. And so Ireland is kind of like big tech central, and that's a problem. Hey, Claude, you want me to tussle with Gemma over the monarchy? Oh, you've got no ideas about my views on the monarchy in 2023, Claude. I don't think Gemma and I have any differences. But
No, I mean, I'm all in favor of Catholic monarchies. And I mean, you would be too, Dave, like in terms of them being stable. I'm not necessarily saying you'd agree with the Catholic bit, but
Oh yeah.
before all these revolutions happened, we had relatively stable countries, but
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, so, yeah, and that's factually accurate, factually accurate. But back to Dublin and back to like Twitter's got their European base there, I think, isn't that right, Gemma?
Yes, they have most of their headquarters here, Google, Alphabet, Facebook, because you see, they chose the most corrupt country in Europe. And obviously, Ireland is in a league of its own. They knew they could get away with anything. And so, yeah, Twitter. I mean, I think really most of them, and most of the big pharma companies as well, are headquartered here. And not only for Europe, but it's their EMEA headquarters, their European, Middle East, and Africa. EMEA, as it's called. So we have Pfizer now moving. I think they're going to move the bulk of their operations to Dublin, which is terrifying. If you go to the outskirts of Dublin, say towards Kildare, now the amount of plants that are opening, Amazon, every time you pass down this particular road called the N7, I mean, it's just Amazon is expanding and expanding and expand. It's terrifying. But then we hear that Google is closing down a lot of operations, getting rid of a lot of staff. So there's a lot of good things happening too.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I'd love to have seen would if Twitter would have just shut down their Dublin operation. That would have been a plus, or moved it at least somewhere else. Because I think one of the issues we have is that the people in charge of Twitter in Dublin, they're not the best of people, and I think, Gemma, that's what's holding up, or maybe part of what's holding up what we need to see, which is freedom restored for you and for everyone else who has been, banned by Twitter. But
yeah, we spoke about that, David, just before we move on from Twitter, about those people, and Sinead McSweeney, who refused to leave when Elon Musk took over, and she took him to court. Now, I don't know, was this all theater? But, in the same way the CIA are controlling Silicon Valley in the States and here, we had this woman, Sinead McSweeney. She came out of the police service of Northern Ireland. She is a Southerner. She then was working for PR in An Garda Síochána, our highly corrupt police force here. And so she's a police operative. She's a CIA operative, basically. And she's heading up Twitter. Now, apparently she's still here because she seemingly won her court case. If Musk wanted her out, he could get her out. But she's very inactive on Twitter now. So that's a good sign.
Yeah. It's interesting. I see loads of comments streaming in, Gemma. Someone Irish in Manchester says all big tech and big pharma are headquartered in communist Ireland. Someone else says, living in 20 years in Manchester, I'm terrified for my family's safety in Ireland. Gosh, it is. The thing is, Gemma, like, we've been around long enough to see Ireland change so much. I think certainly since the 1990s, definitely. I'm very aware of the change compared to even in the 80s and then going back to the 60s and 70s. It's changed in ways that so people, it's almost unbelievable. I got to say, I'm just chatting to you, I just find it unrecognizable place, and we're going to get into some of the detail around that. But I just wonder what is it like to be living in it, and all this is changing around, Gemma, and it's become, just, as I say, to me, unrecognizable.
Well, every day I get out into it, I feel like I'm going to a funeral, and that's the death of my country. Your jaw is just on the ground at the things you see, the amount of construction that's going up in the most inappropriate places, the foothills of the Dublin Mountains, beautiful landscapes that were supposed to be kept, green corridors from the mountains down to the sea, down to Dublin Bay, completely ruined by this so-called climate-friendly government, who talk about the environment nonstop, and yet, they're absolutely destroying it. Slums, Soviet-style slums going up everywhere, David. So, all the places we used to go as children, they're gone. It's all of the little shops and everything has been wiped out. So it's like, where am I? I don't know this place. I don't know the people. where is Mrs. Murphy gone and where is Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah.
They're all gone, and they've been, replaced by foreigners, every single day in the area I live, which is part of South Dublin. And, you would have thought parts of South Dublin, the place that I live, and that would never have been impacted by mass immigration, but nowhere is unaffected now. And increasingly you see Africans, Chinese walking around. You're just like, what? Where am I? It's shocking.
And like you take a major city like Dublin, I mean, we see a sort of similar great replacement in other major cities. But the thing about Ireland that gets me is that once you move out beyond Dublin, or Gemma, out into the much more rural areas, they haven't escaped, have they? They are also getting the full treatment. And that's the bit that really shocks. And some of the videos, we've talked about and saying, I mean, it's stunning what's happening in rural Ireland, never mind, metropolitan Ireland.
It's just unbelievable. And they're targeting our tourist towns like Killarney, Kenmare, West Cork, May, all the beautiful tourist towns that the tourists, the American tourists, bring a lot of money into. They don't want to come here anymore. People say to me all the time from the UK and the US and Australia and New Zealand. I was there last year and I didn't meet one Irish person, because the whole service industry now is serviced mostly by Eastern Europeans or Africans. So you just don't get, if you go into a hotel now, you'll get this sort of, brusque Eastern European approach, which is very different to the Irish approach.
Yep.
It's, centuries of communism, decades of communism, unfortunately, does create this sort of cold, more austere front that we now have in Ireland. And is it any wonder Americans don't want to come and spend their dollars? And they're not going to come back because it's too noticeable in Ireland, because it's such a small country. We're just being white. And the Irish are broken. They're broken. They're on their knees. They can't believe what's happened to their country. So they're not really able to fight because they're too broken and vaccine damaged.
Again, comments like Jason, one of our regulars, Jason O'Brien, says West Meath has been destroyed. Ellie from, I think she was from Northern Ireland, says sounds like Belfast. Well, yeah, Belfast isn't great, but it's still not as bad as Dublin. It's well, yet anyway, I suppose, Ellie. But again, Living Truth says 9 of the biggest pharma companies in the world are now based. So you really got a tough there. You got you got the axis of evil, haven't you? You got big pharma, you got big tech, and you've got a globalist government. I mean, let's talk about the government then that you got. I mean, because I see they just swapped over from Martin to Varadkar again. What it seems a strange setup, Gemma.
Look, they're puppets of the WEF. Varadkar who's a gay Indian. He was over there, last few days. Yeah, they're just puppets. I mean, they're children. How anyone could take them seriously? How anyone could take our doll seriously? It's completely rigged with imbeciles who are blackmailed, financially compromised, have all sorts of dark secrets, and complete psychopaths. They don't care a toss about the Irish people. We have this NCT, the equivalent of your MOT thing. I mean, we're constantly having it rubbed in our noses that we're second-class citizens again in this country. And they've done this thing now with the national car test, whereby if you're Ukrainian and you have your car here, you don't have to have a national car test. You don't have to have an MOT. But of course, Paddy has to have one. So, I could literally go and get a car over from Ukraine and drive it, no problem. So they're constantly telling us, you better realize now you don't matter in this country anymore. You're irrelevant, and your children are irrelevant. So, but I don't know, people, it's very, 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 it's very, like, you couldn't but be filled with despair. Only that I have my faith that keeps me going. But
well, the point we said again, some comments here. Someone says all 160 in the Dáil are fully on board. Well, yeah, But listen, that's no different to Parliament as well. They're all on board. I mean, this is one of the similarities that we have, Gemma. We face the same enemy, and they are in, they're in full view. You've got them in the Irish Parliament. We've got them in the British Parliament. They've been bought and paid for, as you rightly say.
They have. They have. Yeah.
I like this comment. Someone says we have to play some Irish music for the Eastern Europeans to cheer them up a bit.
No.
Well, possibly,
well,
yeah.
Well, we're all Eastern Europeans now. Now that we're all living under communism, you can see like the charm, the Irish eyes that used to be smiling are not smiling anymore, and
No.
that is the thing that I really notice. That Ireland was a very sort of happy place and so friendly, and that's going. It's just going with every passing day, and so it's the annihilation of a culture that was built up over thousands of years by our ancestors, and it's just been wiped out in one generation. Even
a generation, yeah.
It's been
one generation is all it's taken to do it. But I think, Gemma, one of the things I most appreciate about all the work you do is the fact that you put so much effort into detailing the stuff that's going on. And I mean, for example, there was a video I saw you posted. I love the way you post your videos, by the way. You do it very, very well. It was a hotel. So I think it was Donegal. There was a hotel, and it was a sign up. They were closed to Irish, but open to Ukrainian visitors.
Yes.
And honestly, I mean, that one took my breath away when I saw that one. And yet, that's incredible. So the Irish aren't welcome in hotels in Ireland because Ukrainians are in them.
Yeah.
How can this be?
Some of the nicest hotels and country houses. I mean, they've been given the best of everything. And again, it's all part of this communist strategy to demoralize the people. When we have our own people living in tents all over the country, living in doorways. And so, I mean, I think they looked at the Irish, they saw how we had fallen from being very devout Catholic people to total degenerates, alcoholics. And, we managed to keep a lot of the filth out, the pornography. I mean, when I was growing up, there was none of that around.
Yeah.
And because we had a strong church with a moral authority. And, but that, now that that's all come in, the people are just so, they just are so immature, and they live such materialistic lives, and they've just abandoned their heritage completely. So this is why this has all happened. Like, I'm not in any doubt. I don't blame the Ukrainians. I don't even blame the government, really. The Irish people have allowed this to happen to their own country because they're too focused on money. Now, they are, heavily in debt. But
yeah. Well, do you think, when we talked about the Celtic Tiger, remember the Celtic Tiger years? Was that actually the beginning of the end, Gemma? Because that's when the money flowed in and Ireland seemed to explode. But at the same time, do you think that paralleled what's become a moral nosedive with the Irish people?
That, yes. And the introduction of the welfare state, which again, we never had. In the way that it had already been launched, say, in Scandinavia and in the UK. But we didn't have that because there was a very strong sense of you have to, and I think it does come from Catholicism, that you have to fend for yourself. You can't, don't rely on the state for anything. And that's my political ethos. We don't want the state. The state should only be there to protect our freedom, to protect our private property rights, etc. So the welfare state came in very late. When I was growing up, David, this is hard to believe, but in the 70s and 80s in Dublin, there was just 2 council blocks in Dublin and in the country, out in Ballymun. And, there were very few places that you couldn't go to. Like, Ireland was, and even the council estates that were starting to be built then were very nice. Everyone had back and front garden, little semi-Ds, good semi-Ds to raise a big family in.
Yeah.
But, I remember then as a journalist in the 90s and getting into the 2000s, I
Yeah.
seemed to be constantly covering stories about teenage pregnancy and unmarried mothers. And, obviously this was being done in a way to try and bring all of this to normalize it and to get the father out of the home. So it was the destruction of the nuclear family, and then the banks coming into a people who were again against taking on debt, which is very much part of Catholic culture. You do not take on debt. And so they started, offering these loans. And, before you knew it, Paddy was up to his neck in debt and buying second apartments or buying apartments, over in Bulgaria and getting extensions built. And, so it's just money, materialism. And
I vividly remember, Gemma, going around in a taxis in Dublin in the mid to late 90s or whatever. And every taxi driver had got his apartment in, Spain or over in, Bulgaria or wherever it was. They all, and it was like, I just think to myself, how can you afford all of this? But of course, as you say, because they were seduced into debt. And that's one way that they break people, isn't it? The debt mountain they put on their shoulders.
That's it, exactly. And they kept telling us on the media that, we were so poor, the Irish were so poor.
That's right.
No, the Irish were one of the richest people because they were self-sufficient. Every one of us in Ireland is one generation removed from the farm, even us Dubs. And so, we were all sustained. We were potentially, having come from that agrarian agricultural background, it's in our genes to know that we should always have this connection with the land, to be able to raise animals, to feed, to grow vegetables. And that was where our wealth was. And, most of our grandparents grew up in little cottages and they reared huge, big Catholic families. They had babies, like armies of children. And, again, when I was a child, we had aunts and uncles everywhere and it was fantastic. And now, our children barely, they might have one or two aunts, and it's so sad. That whole thing is so sad that we've lost the big Irish family, which was the foundation of the nation.
That's right, Gemma. And if you look at places like Italy, another Catholic country, historically, obviously, and you look at the birth rate over there, then you see the same thing. You see this atomization of the family, and then the fertility rate drops below 2. I mean, we saw today, I think Japanese have come out and said that they're in like terminal demographic decline because they're just not having enough babies. But Ireland, within living memory, was good. Like, I mean, that was the thing that I think was helping Ireland grow and prosper. The family and the family unit, then the attack in that. And then, of course, Gemma, there was the abortion thing as well. I mean, the way of that. And I wanted to read this out to you because someone contacted me before I came on air to say that, just talking about this, saying that, Gemma, you got to the heart of some of these issues way before many others, including renowned feminist Germaine Greer. This is Germaine Greer on the abortion debate. She said, this is Germaine, quote, "I have been thinking about this lately, and I've got a suspicion which I need to get investigated properly, that we got legalized abortion because the fertility industry needed it. It wasn't us. It wasn't us. We could have marched until our feet fell off. They wouldn't have given it. It was for the fertility industry, for the abortion industry, essentially." Would you agree with that?
She's finally come to that conclusion.
Yeah, she's caught up with you. That's
she's done a lot of damage in the meantime. Oh, look, I mean, look, the programming really started with my generation, although my mother's generation, they were just starting to be encouraged. And but really, the programming we got was relentless. Career. Women should not be in the home. They're treated like second-class citizens, even though in our Catholic constitution, our constitution has a special place for women in the home, so that we should recognize that special place because they rear the future generations. They should do the bulk of the rearing while their husbands go out and keep the family alive and are the breadwinners. And when they have women then flooding the workforce, the husband's wages go right down. And then the state can get control of the children. But what the liberal feminazis have done, I shouldn't use that term now, but feminists, I shouldn't have, from what I've learned recently. But anyway, it's they came in basically and, you know, started telling us that our constitution was so regressive and old-fashioned, you know, because women should try to be in the home where possible so that the state can't indoctrinate the children of the future. And you know, that's what was programmed into us, and we didn't realize that that was all about protecting our economic security. You know, but instead we were forced into the workplace because of all this crazy hyperinflation of property prices, and that you needed 2 salaries to buy a house. And the whole purpose of that is so that the state can get them very young, when they're still barely out of the womb, and start the indoctrination process. Put them into these industrial creches where they're handed a unicorn with no gender, and that they begin, and it's rainbow colors everywhere, and they turn them into little Marxists. And we see, like, it's so sad.
It is shocking, Gemma, and I know you've done a lot of work on this recently, I think, but in particular regard to the libraries, the school libraries, and the whole then the LGBTQ plus agenda being advanced into little kids at an early age. And you know, I saw some of the images of some of the books that are available to kids, and you know, I'm sorry, it's awful, absolutely awful, total indoctrination.
Oh, I mean, it's criminal. It's the most grotesque form of pedophilia. The explicit nature of this. I mean, and they're starting it. I mean, there was this all kicked off really last week. We knew it was going on, but a Cork library, Cork City Libraries posted this thing that they were having this sort of rainbow friendly thing for children, an exhibition, and some people looked into the detail of some of the books that they were highlighting, and just horrific. I didn't want to have to confront it and go into the detail, but I decided I would, and I did a short stream about it last night if people want to see it. But you need a strong stomach. It's so incredibly graphic. And you know, they're teaching them the most warped, horrible practices that any normal healthy relationship should not be involved in. And you know, again, it's just to destroy them, to destroy their little minds.
I mean, I like last week I was going on about I'm not sure what we're having here, but
that's a teacher who's come out. Quite a few teachers now are coming out and saying it has to stop.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's good that there's some awakening. Some people are speaking up. It shouldn't just be left to people like you, Gemma. Those, you know, teachers have surely a duty of responsibility to the kids as well, and they should be objecting to this kind of stuff. But I mean, how does it get into the libraries? Who is where does it come from?
The councils, David, as in Northern Ireland as well. It's you know, coming from the government. So the councils run the libraries, and so it's very much, you know, the last few years, like they did try to do a drag time story time and a drag queen story time in one of the libraries in Dublin last year, and it got stopped. But you see, what's happened is there's been a schism in this country in the Catholic Church. And all of the really hardcore trad cats, as we call them, the traditional Catholics, they've gone, they've left the mainstream church, and they've joined like the Society of Pius X, these are the sort of pre-Vatican II ideas, which we all want to go back to, because Vatican II, the introduction of Vatican II in the 1960s was the introduction of liberalism in the traditional church. And, you know, all of our lovely traditions were abandoned, and, priests turned their backs to the tabernacle, to the Eucharist, and it became more like a concert rather than a mass. So so the church has been fully infiltrated by these Marxist priests down here. And I mean, it's absolutely appalling. I mean, but I've tried to stay within the mainstream church, because I niggle at them when they talk about climate change, and that I will go up and complain afterwards. But the solid Catholics are now gone. And this is a big problem. And I'm talking about it more and more, because, I was talking to a friend of mine today about what Gramsci said about the infiltration of all of the institutions, that's how socialist communists work. They infiltrated. And I'm now saying we need to start infiltrating all of the institutions rather than walking away from them and saying it's too awful. We have to get back into the churches, the New World Order churches. We have to get back into the football clubs, the GAA, and the schools, and start saying, no, you're not going to do this to our children.
Yeah, because if you leave the battleground, then you hand it to your enemy, don't you? Basically,
that's it.
If you do that, but
that's it.
You see those traditional Catholics that have left the mainstream churches, like where have they gone to? They've
gone back to the Latin Mass, which is wonderful. The Latin Mass is a very spiritual experience, and we just saw the tail end of it when we were growing up. But they say to pray in Latin is I mean, the Pope now, he's in the current Freemasonic Pope.
Yep.
Francis is now in the process, David, of banning the Latin Mass, right? So this is indicative. I mean, why would he want to do this? They say that the devil does not like, he's irritated by the use of the Latin language. Okay. And I do believe that. But
sorry, that makes me feel good, because it was only the other week I was advocating that I'd like to see Latin put on the curriculum and taught in every school, because it is the most marvelous language. So I'm glad you said that, Gemma.
We do, but as Catholics, we believe that the traditional Catholics would believe that it is the most powerful language to pray. And even if you just know the Our Father or the Hail Mary in it, and that it does trigger the devil, but it's the language of the church. But anyway, so they've gone, and I can understand it. And I love nothing more than to go to a Latin Mass. I love it. And I do try to do both, because you go to the mainstream Mass and you will be lectured about refugees, climate change, and LGBT possibly.
No.
And put on your mask and get your vaccines. That's what we have had to stomach. So the really good Catholics have left, and they've gone off as to these pre-Vatican II churches, which are available, but they're schismatic. And we remember the scene of Jesus in the sea when he was with the apostles in the Sea of Galilee, and the storm was happening, and he was asleep, and his apostles were saying, Jesus, waking up, we're all going to drown. And he woke up and he said, calm down, and he calmed the waters. And E. Michael Jones uses this analogy that the church is the boat, and if we jump out of the boat into the sea, we're all going to drown. But as broken as the church is, Jesus is still the head of it. We have to stick within it. Some of the best Christians I accept are Protestant, but Ireland has a special connection with Catholicism, and I do believe it is what made this country a fantastic country, because we held back on the abortion, divorce, the gay marriage. We held back for longer than most other countries in the world, and because of that, it was a very stable place to grow up.
Can I ask you though, just on that, because the Catholic Church in Ireland got such a bad name in recent decades as well, and it seems to have paralleled this with all the allegations about the sexual abuse that was going on and blah 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 blah. So what's your take on that? Do you think that the church itself had started? Well, what's your thoughts on that, Gemma? Basically.
Well, I've had to educate myself on all of that. Like nobody in our, like I, as a journalist, have exposed an awful lot of clerical abuse. Now, you know, a lot of the abuse was going on in Catholic schools was being carried out by lay teachers. One of the
Yep.
cases that I worked on recently was a very well-known rugby coach who was an arch rampant paedophile in a very upmarket Dublin school, Terenure College. But, you know, the media didn't touch him. They were only happy when it was priests. They would only go after priests. But the history of the infiltration of the Catholic Church is, you know, unless you understand that, and I've educated myself about it, there's, you know, plenty of research available to show that communists, a woman called Bella Dodd, for example, every Catholic should look into this if they're thinking of coming back to the church. She was a senior member of the American Communist Party, and she later converted to Catholicism, but she admitted that her role was to put pederasts and communists into the Catholic monasteries, which were producing the pillars of society. They were producing, you know, the nuns were building the best hospitals in the world. And the priests and the nuns were producing the best schools. And this was all done for free. They weren't looking for money for it. And, you know, I come from a family, you know, my mother was a traditional nurse, and like they weren't interested in, her seniors would have been nuns. They weren't interested in pushing vaccines and drugs into people. You know, it was natural healing, and it was just very, it was very civilized, and it was about keeping people alive and not, you know, the whole concept of euthanasia. It was caring because their boss was God and not big pharma and money. So the Catholic Church was infiltrated heavily by Marxists, and they're in every, you know, there's very few bishops left in this country, maybe one down in Waterford, that's it. The rest of them are hardcore lefties, and if you challenge them, you know, you get deafening silence. So
I think for me, Gemma, one of the things, and it applies for across the UK and Ireland, and all churches, all traditional or sort of the established churches anyway, they were a complete failure and massive letdown during COVID. Instead of staying open, instead of providing the flock with sanctuary and somewhere to go, they shut their doors. I mean, that to me, all that really sort of emphasized to my mind really was just how corrupted most of them are. Not all of them, but most of them are. And it's a shocking indictment that it's happened, but it's happened slowly. I see quite a few comments about the Pope, the current Pope, that is, and they're not particularly complimentary.
I wouldn't say so.
No, I mean, he's basically saying he's a Marxist, he's a communist. I see different comments. Well, what's your thoughts on the current Pope?
Oh, I've had no interest. Really, the last time I had any real interest in the papacy was probably John Paul II, but even there are big questions about him now. So no, I mean, I love Italy. I go to Italy at any opportunity, and I love Rome, and I love the Vatican, but I hate what they've come to represent. But I love, you see, the thing about Catholicism is it's the beauty and the transcendent nature of it, that it lifts you to closer to heaven and to Christ. And so we see it when we go to Italy, the beauty of Catholicism in the architecture, the beautiful mountain villages that are built around the church. And so that's, we see that Catholicism has so much to offer in that regard, in terms of the supernatural, and we need that. We need it, and it's been beaten out of our churches. We don't get the old hymns even that we used to. This connection with music and art and beauty. Beauty is truth, and truth leads us to God. Truth is God. So but I do feel this was all prophesized. As Catholics, we believe in the messages of Fatima, which were witnessed by 70,000 people, witnessed what happened in Fatima in 1917. And, as all Christians have to accept that there have been prophets who laid out everything that was going to happen.
Mhm.
And so we knew the fall of the Vatican was coming, that the papacy would be infiltrated, and it has. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean we should throw the baby out with the
No.
bathwater. The Catholicism is what matters. And you know, and I mean, at the end of the day, our relationship with Jesus Christ is what will keep us going. But we need the infrastructure to remain. We don't want our churches to be turned into LGBT, you know,
Yeah.
libraries or whatever, and that's what's going to happen.
Well, we just last week, Gemma, here in the UK, we had the Church of England the bishops rejected the notion of actually conducting a gay marriage in the church. Now, they'll still provide a gay blessing, so not impressed, that
I
shouldn't be.
saw that, yes.
So it is, but it shows again, this relentless advance through all Christian faith, basically, of these agendas, the LGBT agenda in particular, which if you stand against it, you're demonized by demons, ironically. But there you go, you are. If you stand against it, and you can see that, or the Archbishop of Canterbury. I mean, you can just tell he wants to give the gay marriage in his, but he knows it would totally split the church even more than it is. So that's why he's holding back, But and it's interesting, Gemma, because people go on about, Catholic Church, Protestant churches, why aren't you, being inclusive to the LGBTQ plus community? What about the mosques? What about the mosques? Why do they provide same-sex marriage? I don't think so. Or have I missed that?
Well, I think we've a lot to learn from our Muslim brothers, because I quite like the conservative nature of their society. I'm starting to wonder, because I don't want women to be covered. Absolutely not.
No.
But there is that modesty there, and you look at Western women who behave like absolute, and I'm not saying obviously most of them don't, but so I'm not saying I'm all of a sudden pro-Islam, but I don't know. I mean, it's just so sad. What I will say about Catholicism, I don't want to sound like complete Catholic freak, but the one thing is, as I always felt with it, you always knew where you stood on all issues to do with morality. For example, human experimentation.
Yep.
Like, as a Catholic, as it's in your genetics to know, it's in your DNA. You can't experiment on humans, no matter what, whether they're in the womb or whether they're about to exit to the next world. You can't ever do that.
No.
So that's why when you see these priests from the pulpit saying the vaccine, and you go up to them after Mass, do you know that there were aborted babies involved? No, don't be ridiculous. You're crazy. This is what you get. But so this is what is sickening. They're not Catholics, but we know what Catholicism says. You like sex before marriage. It's a no. Don't do it, because you'll end up hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And I know this culture is all about, it's all about satisfying the self and the passions. But if we only looked back to those rules that were brought in for our own good 2,000 years ago, and they really, I'm afraid that's what's gone wrong with the human race, that they just want to satisfy all of the physical demands, and they don't look after their spirit, their soul. They don't feed their souls.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where, whenever they imposed all the lockdown tyrannies and then the vaccine tyrannies and all of that, when they imposed all that upon us, people didn't have that spiritual anchor, that resource to be able to completely stand against it like you did, Gemma. People didn't, those who didn't have that, I think quite a few of them, I think, were easy victims, because when you don't believe in God, then you'll believe in anything.
Yeah. When you don't fear the Lord, you fear the state.
Yes.
Like the state is their God. And you see also, David, I think because so many of them had left their own faith, that they needed to join a new cult. I'm not saying I'm not saying that Christianity is a cult. Some parts of it are, but they had to, so they felt suddenly they belonged in the COVID cult. And they had their rituals, putting on their mask, and they could talk about it. And, you know, he had it, and did you hear she's now in ICU and all that. So it gave their lives meaning and purpose, which, you know, only God can do that. Only God.
Exactly. It shows how empty they were, but they did do that. I talked at the time, and back in 2021, the rituals of COVID, the hand washing, the application of the mask, the staying, what is it, 1.5 meters, whatever it was, 2 meters apart, all this stuff. But actually, you know, on a serious note, I think those who were behind pushing these COVID rituals, because I think these were pretty satanic people behind it anyway. So I think they knew what they were doing. I think, Gemma, they knew that they were providing a new religion. And in the UK and the NHS, it was turned into, you know, it essentially the UK religion. So it does speak to this. When faith vanishes, then as human beings, we're weaker and we're vulnerable to those who would prey upon us, I think.
Exactly. And our God-given rights, you know, which they can never take from us, but they allow, you know, the state to trample all over you. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it was so ritualistic, and they hated the fact that we would not participate in it. You know, when John and I took our case back in April 2020, like the hatred that was poured out upon us. And I've tried to comprehend that and where they were coming from. And it is because we wouldn't get in on the virus, a deadly virus. You know, why aren't they afraid of it? So these people live their lives in fear. It's been pumped into them from the box in the corner every single night. And if only they knew, just switch off that box, reconnect with your Christian faith, and your life will be so much happier, you know, and you'll realize all the materialistic things that you're seeking, you don't need any of them. You won't be bringing any of them with you. So
no.
It's a superficial. I mean, it's so superficial, the culture we are in now. But I do feel definitely there is a turn back. You know, the churches are actually still quite full down here, which is a miracle, really. So, you know, do you feel there is a turnaround, David?
I think at the moment, yes, I do. I think it's been. I talk about the dam is breaching. You know, especially the COVID one, especially the jab thing, because as we both agree, Gemma, truth will out eventually. Eventually, the truth gets out, and it is getting out now, and that's causing a lot of people a lot of anxiety. You know, I don't think it's coincidental that people like Jacinda Ardern suddenly bailed out down in New Zealand, although there might be other reasons for that as well. But I don't think it's coincidental. And then, across these islands, you can see a lot of those people that were pushing the 100% safe, 100% effective jobs are now kind of saying, "Oh no, we never said that. No, that must have been somebody else." So I do see, and Gemma, that's why we have to keep going. I think because ultimately, if we're like rocks that will not be, washed away, then eventually, we attract other things towards us. So I actually feel in 2023, certainly on the COVID side of things, a lot more optimistic than I might have felt last year. But then I wanted to talk to you then about as well, because so much to try and pack in, Gemma. So I'm going to jump here a wee bit. But the other thing is that the state, you mentioned earlier Ballymun. You talk about Ballymun, and I know Ballymun, and whatnot. And I remember talking, years ago, maybe 2013, 14, something like that. Back in the days when YouTube didn't heavily censor me, about the gangs. I talked then about the gangs of the West London, those estates out there that, as far as I understood, Tesco wouldn't even do a delivery. They're scared to do deliveries into the, you know what I'm talking about. They were scared to do that. And so then that got me into the whole, well, what is the state of law and order like in Ireland? And there's a wonderful photograph, Gemma, which I wanted to share with everybody watching. If we can bring it up now. And this, Gemma, perhaps you'd care to explain this one to our viewers and listeners.
Well, look, I want to thank you, David, and all of the people of Northern Ireland for lending us this man, because he is from the north. And
Yes.
this is, we call him, he's Drew Harris, but we call him Drew Harass. And for some reason, they couldn't find anyone from Ireland to head up the police. So they had to go up and get somebody who was very active in MI5, which is a bit of an unusual thing for, Irish people to have an MI5 figure running their police force. I would have thought a little bit strange, but he was put in, no questions asked, except by me and a few others. And so he's been an absolute disaster. But for me, he's been a godsend. He may not see it like that, but because my main speciality is Garda corruption as a journalist, and those cases you read out at the beginning, they're all cases of murders that have been covered up by his force. So when the last two commissioners retired in absolute disgrace, I would put my hands up and say I was thankfully a little bit responsible for their departures, and through the work that I was doing, exposing the corruption they were involved in. And then this one comes down, and everyone is just shaking their heads. But his job, we call him, he's the head of the Garda stage school. The only thing they do is stage. It's a theatrical organization now, Freemasons, and they just basically set up these problem reaction solution events. That's all they do. They don't do any crime or anything like that. Well, they do crime, but not investigating it. And I mean, they actually have an airport now. This is just unbelievable stuff, but it makes perfect sense. They're bringing drugs in to the country, the war against drugs. That's really what that is about, is flooding a country with drugs. And every single village in Ireland has drugs now. And that's thanks to this police force. One of their cronies actually owns a small airport where a large amount of cocaine, millions of euros of cocaine, has recently been seized only because of international police forces finding out about it. The Gardaí obviously knew because one of them owned this up in Roscommon, County Longford, and a little airfield, and it's owned by a Garda lackey. He has worked for the Guards for years, but immediately the media said the owners of the airfield had nothing to do with it, and we're expected to swallow this. We're expected to believe that the Garda owner of this airfield that's importing cocaine had nothing to do with it. Not have. So basically what is happening is we see now what the Gardaí, this Antifa picture that you see.
We just bring it back up again there.
Sorry, I can't off it. Once I get going on the Guards, don't get me started.
Antifa logo. What's that about?
So he was on tour in Donegal near his old home last week, and a great journalist called Patricia McCafferty, she went into this gathering. This was in a council meeting. This was in a county council office, and they have Antifa stickers on the notice board. So he just happened to be standing in front of it, but he was basically going around and telling the Guards that they're not going to have Garda stations anymore, so they can forget that idea. And they're going to start this business of just closing down Garda stations, and it'll be all robotic, which it pretty much is now. But
well, actually, Gemma, that's exactly what they did in Northern Ireland as well. So just about for all around me, where there used to be little police stations, all gone. So it's the same. It's remarkable how similar the situation is. So so we have no rule of law here in the north.
No, and all they do is police the likes of me, which is a joke, because I've spent the last 30 years of my life trying to uphold law and order in this country and expose corruption. But still, they're like, they just spend their days trolling me, and they can there's nothing they can get on me. I mean, they've put COVID convictions on me, but it's great. I wear it as a badge of honor. But
but it is shameful though that if a country has no law and order, then things can't go well. And especially I saw someone just put up a comment there a minute or two ago regarding City West. Did you see that one? The guards at City West Hotel, as we speak live this evening, are alleging that Somalians have taken over the hotel.
Of course.
Yeah, and I didn't realize, because that's a refugee hotel, isn't it, City West?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Listen, I'd well believe it, but the Drew, as we speak, is trying to concoct some far right element to that story. You can be sure.
Yeah.
There's no way like it'll be, the Somalians are out of control. It'll be, but it's the far right's fault. If the far right hadn't provoked the Somalians, so that this is what and they drive around in rainbow painted cars. This is our police force and the so-called defense forces. They have these squad cars with the rainbow color. I mean, they're completely, like, I know the police in the UK are a disaster as well.
Oh yeah, they're hopeless. They're absolutely useless. But I think, I mean, one of the things we've seen in Ireland, Gemma, over the last number of weeks is we've seen all these coach loads of people of Middle Eastern appearance descending on, well, not just Dublin, but there's been a lot of stuff around the East Wall and whatnot. And we've seen a lot of Irish people getting very expressing their concern about that, let's say. And then you get the likes of Drew Harris and all, and they are then pushing this, my right-wing Nazi conspiracists. And you think, hang on a second, surely it's reasonable of people to be a bit concerned about where these hundreds, thousands, Gem, I don't know how many, of individuals, why are they coming into Ireland in such numbers?
Well, because Ireland is the most corrupt country, and they're gonna, I mean, these poor people are going to be, they'll be vax boosted and killed here as well as the Irish. It's the guards that are bringing them in. The guards are responsible for immigration, and they're facilitating them. And as if there's the slightest hint of any little bit of trouble from the far right, which doesn't exist, then the guards will be down on them. So it's so easy to wipe out a population of 4.5 million. It can be done like that. And they love Ireland because of that, because they can get their dream come true. It's not as easy in a bigger country like the UK with bigger population. But here they can see it. Wow, we've nearly done it. We've nearly replaced these bloody Irish,
Yeah, that's right. And I think during COVID, for example, like the alleged vaccine rate, which I don't believe, but anyway, it was pretty high in Ireland. Like a lot of people seem to be seduced into taking, the shots 1, 2, 3 times, whatever. And now we see, Gemma, the excess deaths in Ireland are strikingly high. Is that something that's talked about?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it is by people on our side. We're horrified, I mean, you literally, again, every time I'm out now, it's just ambulances everywhere. And your eyes are just out and you think, are the other people around me not seeing this? Like, when you're driving, they're just flying. Because you see, again, in a small country, David, it's very hard to hide something like this.
Yeah.
I went up to an ambulance depot to give them a copy of our Irish and the new edition of the Irish Light the other day. And he did receive it, to be fair, busy ambulance depot in Dublin. And I said, are you seeing a lot of sudden deaths? And he said, oh yeah, no, there's definitely something going on. And I said, yeah, it's the vaccine.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I wouldn't say, I don't know. There is something going on. But he says, I got it myself. And I said, yeah. And why did you get it? He said he was okay. He said, oh, well, I'd no choice. I'd lose my job. I said, no, that's not a good enough reason. But so they're in denial as well. They're all in denial.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I find, you see, all the people that are taking, that they haven't been well this winter so far. They've been sick multiple times. They're all the jabbed. They are all the jabbed people. And they don't see it. They don't make the connection that, oh, I've got the COVID again. Oh, yeah, but you've been multiple jabbed against it. So whatever you've got, which it isn't COVID either, by the way, it's vaccine damage. But they don't say, their minds have been so messed up, Gemma, after these years of propaganda, that honestly, when the 4th or 5th jab comes, some of them will probably go and still get it. And there's nothing we can do for people like that, I think.
No, you see, and they rely so much on the health service. Like they sort of go from test to test. They're always going in getting their bloods done and getting
Yeah,
scans, and
yeah,
they're total hypochondriacs, really, a lot of
yeah,
people. And then
yeah,
they get their prescriptions, and so they don't want to cut that link with the health service, the NHS, obviously in your case, which
oh yeah,
it's a bit
yeah.
like the BBC, isn't it? They find it hard to disconnect from the institutions of the state. So if they say no to a booster, well, then they're in trouble, because that might mean they won't get their bloods done in 3 months, or they might, so they want to stay in with these bullying HSE, NHS heads that are,
Yeah.
harassing them. And so and they're weak. They're morally weak. They don't, they don't
Yeah.
have the strength to say, no, get lost. I'm not having another one.
Well, I've got to say, I have a slight degree of sympathy because during the first week of the new year, I wasn't well. And it wasn't COVID. I had an infection, a sort of lower abdomen infection, right?
Yeah.
And for a couple of days, I really didn't feel good at all, right? So I went through this farcical scenario whereby, because I was so in pain, right? I thought, oh, okay, I'll phone up the NHS out of hours doctor to have a chat. So I phoned up at 7 o'clock at night, and I was told, yes, you're in a queue. There's 320 people in front of you. That'll take about 12. It'll take us, well, by 12, say 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, we'll only have seen half of them. So there's no point in you being in the queue anyway. So I thought, okay, well, fine, forget that. And then here's the bit. Then I thought, should I go to A&E? So this is the big moment. Do I go? And I thought, no way. Because once you go into an NHS A&E, they make you wear masks. I'm not wearing masks. They would test you. They could test you for COVID. And that's, to me, that's going to put you ultimately in a very bad place if, heaven forbid, you test false positive. And the tests don't work anyway. So it's isn't it ironic? The most dangerous places to go, Gemma, are hospitals in this new world in which we live.
Yes.
So,
David, bring yourself back to your childhood, right? In the north, in the countryside.
yeah.
What would have happened if you needed a doctor? He would have been out on his bike
Yeah, we had a family
in 10 minutes.
Yep.
No problem. Any hour of the day or night.
Yep.
So what has happened? It's pharmaceuticals are killing our people, and chemicals and all the poison they're putting in the water, etc. So, and then we go to them looking for, I mean, what I've read, I'm like getting back into the whole natural health thing, when we're sick.
Me too. Yeah.
It's a detox. Our body is detoxing. It's a good sign. We have to let it do its detox and not take anything.
Yes.
Really, not even food, just water, keep it hydrated and let it do its thing. And we go about it, all this knowledge, wisdom over thousands of years that worked. We know now that it was rubbished by the Rockefellers who took over the health system in the last century, in the early start of the 1900s. Sorry, the 1900s.
Yeah.
And they wiped out all of this knowledge. And so now we know, well, we're going back to it, and we see we don't need all these tablets.
Totally. Absolutely not. In fact, actually, this time next week, next Monday night, I've got a friend of mine, Mr. David McCollum, who is like a sort of naturopath, great guy, all about just what you've talked about, Gemma. It's how we manage our health ourselves. We take responsibility. We don't need big pharma. It's all been provided for us, the things that we need to do, and sorry, update on City West. Got an update in City West.
The Somalians.
The Somalians, apparently there's a video has just been of hang on, two groups battling each other inside a large communal area. No sign of the guards at this stage. Thanks, Mr. Cookville, for the action.
Out there now. No, I can't, because if I go, then they'll say leader of the far right.
Right, yeah. Well, Jim, we've reached the end of our allocated time. Unfortunately, we're going way too fast, and I've been seeing some lovely comments I see coming in. So
David, can I just ask, did you get over that bug? Okay, because
I know.
Yes,
I did.
Doing nothing really. by
But
just leaving.
by staying the hell away from the NHS, the hospitals,
Right.
and all of that there,
There
you
you
know,
go.
but I'll get over it in about 3 or 4 days. And you see, that's the
Yeah.
other, I mean, we could do this in a separate stream, but I think,
Yeah.
you see, when you get colds and flus, I think that's your body detoxing.
It
I
is.
don't believe that it's something that's come in. I think
Mhm.
it's something coming out. But
Yeah.
they can't make money selling us, you know, because I don't want their toxic medications within me.
No.
So
No.
yeah, so
They create customers, not cures. That's their
what is it to
core.
say? A patient cured is a customer lost. Isn't that what they say? So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
It is so true. I mean, honestly, my
Yeah.
eyes have woken up so much on big pharma. It's unbelievable. And that's where, as I
No.
said, we mentioned earlier on, Gemma, the fact that Ireland has got such a big investment in big pharma as
Yeah.
well as big tech, it's particularly, you know, disturbing for a small country like Ireland because
It is.
yeah, I mean, the Irish could become missing in Ireland, and that
Yeah.
worries me enormously. And yeah, you know,
I
just
know.
like what worries me enormously is as well these huge number of immigrants that are coming into Ireland. They skip north as well, and then across. You know, so in the north they're coming, they're swarming up north, and then across to England and Scotland, I suppose, as well. So you know, I wish there was a border for that reason. I'd like this to be able to stop the tide that the corrupt Irish government is
I
wreaking on
know.
people. It's really shocking. But listen, as I
I
said, we
know.
have reached our time. I wanted to thank
Um,
everybody. We've got people I can see and with all over, lots of Irish people on the stream. So thank you, folks, for being with me. And I know you're all fans of Gemma, so I appreciate you coming along to see us both. And yes, just to say, yes, you can find Gemma on Getter. So if you're not following Gemma, here's her stream. It's brilliant stuff. I do enjoy your your
I'm
the way you do
not
it.
even in the same league as you, David. I can't. I
Uh,
mean, your Twitter account is the go-to place. You're fantastic. Just where you get all the information. It's absolutely brilliant.
well,
Brilliant.
well, as I said, listen, you know, you've done so much for Ireland in terms of speaking out for truth and for freedom and for morality. Those are all the things, Gemma, that to be proud of, I think. And so, as I say, all I can see is just streams of good comments here and on all the different platforms. So, folks, thank you all very much. Do make sure you follow Gemma on Twitter as well as in Getter as well. And I think you've also got a BitChute, I think, as well.
Yeah, I love BitChute. The comments, the people who like, they're very discerning people on BitChute and Getter, of course, and Twitter.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah, I like
There are,
BitChute.
there are. I mean, I'm streaming that. This is going out to YouTube and Facebook just for laughs,
Oh,
just for
hilarious.
laughs,
You'll be
because
banned
I have
immediately.
complete contempt for those platforms, right? And I don't even need them. So,
No.
but nonetheless, yes, there are discerning people, and we've got loads of them on the stream tonight, Gemma. And as I say, from all I can say, that they appreciate you. I appreciate you. Keep on speaking out. And yes, there you go. Aloha from Hawaii, from our
That's
Oahu friend.
Donegal. I always wonder, is she? Oh, it's Donegal. Okay, because I
Don-
always see Donegal. I hear
No, it's
Donegal.
Donny girl
Donegal.
from Hawaii. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
God bless Gemma. Aloha
God
all the
bless.
way. And
God
thanks,
bless. Thank
yeah,
you, David. And
my,
yeah,
my,
and
my pleasure. And Gemma, well, I'm sure we'll catch up with each other very soon. But in the meantime, wish you every best wish for the times ahead. And thanks everybody on the streams. Thanks for being with me this evening. And we shall return on Wednesday evening. In the meantime, that's it. Bye-bye.
thanks, David.